The ground trembles. Not from thunder, from feet. Thousands of them. Steel scrapes against wood. Horses scream. Men shout orders that vanish into the noise. Mud sucks at boots. Spears tilt forward. Shields collide. No one can see clearly anymore. Smoke drifts low, stinging the eyes. The air is thick, the heavy, alive with panic. Somewhere ahead, something has gone terribly wrong. A horn sounds, then stops. Another call answers cut short. Men turn their heads, searching for commands that never come. The line hesitates. Just for a heartbeat, that is all it takes. The ground ahead rises suddenly. Dark shapes move within the haze. Not charging, waiting, a shout breaks into screams. Horses rear, armor crashes. A formation folds in on itself like wet cloth. Someone falls. Then another. The press becomes unbearable. You cannot move forward. You cannot move back. The noise grows louder. Closer yet direction no longer matters. Fear spreads faster than any blade. Men trip over bodies they cannot see. Orders turn into prayers. And through it all, one thought spreads from rank to rank. This was not supposed to happen. The enemy was outnumbered, trapped, cornered. So why does it feel like we are the ones surrounded? And as the mist thickens and the ground gives way beneath them, one question hangs unanswered in the chaos. Who is hunting whom? Asterisk the year is 1314. Britain is a land torn by ambition, loyalty, and unfinished wars. For decades, Scotland has lived under the shadow of English domination, its kings challenged, its nobles divided, its people exhausted by occupation and revolt. England, under King Edward II, claims authority over Scotland by right of conquest and inheritance. Scotland, led by Robert the Bruce, refuses to accept it. This is not a single war. It is a long struggle of sieges, betrayals, shifting alliances, and fragile victories. Castles change hands like coins. Oaths are sworn and broken. By summer, pressure reaches a breaking point. The English army gathers large, confident, and heavily equipped. Knights in armor. Archers trained since childhood. Supplies rolling north in long columns. Their goal is clear. Crush resistance. End the rebellion. Force submission once and for all. The Scottish position, by contrast, is desperate. Fewer men, limited resources. No room for error. The chosen ground near Bannockburn, south of Stirling, is narrow and uneven. Streams cut through soft earth. Wooded areas limit movement. To some it looks like a trap. To others, a gamble born of necessity. Morale across both sides is unstable. English commanders argue among themselves over tactics. Formations, timing. Confidence masks inexperience. Scottish forces wait in silence, aware that retreat is no longer an option. They fight not for expansion or wealth, but survival. Rumors move faster than armies. Some claim the Scots will scatter at first contact. Others whisper that the ground itself favors them. Supplies run thin. Sleep comes in fragments. Every sound at night carries meaning. This is not the calm before a storm. It is the slow tightening of something inevitable. Both sides understand that what happens here will echo far beyond the field. Victory would decide not just a battle but legitimacy, sovereignty, memory, yet no one in. Either side fully understands what the next 2 days will unleash, because battles are not decided by numbers alone. They are shaped by terrain, timing, discipline, and by moments when fear overtakes reason at Bannockburn. All of these forces are about to collide. Asterisk. They are not an army that looks impressive at first glance. No polished ranks of steel. No banners glittering with gold. No long lines of mounted knights practicing charges. The men who stand with Robert the Bruce are ordinary by every outward measure. Farmers who once guided plows through hard soil, herdsmen used 2 long days in rain and wind, craftsmen whose hands still carry the memory of tools, not weapons. yet something has changed them. Training begins long before dawn, not with speeches, but with repetition. Step, plant, hold. Each man grips a spear nearly twice his height. Its weight is familiar, no on extension of the body rather than a burden. They practice lifting and lowering it in perfect unison, until individual movement disappears. The formation matters more than the man. They train in Chiltron's tight, disciplined blocks where each soldier's survival depends on the steadiness of the one beside him. There is no room for panic, no room for heroics. If one man breaks, the line opens. If the line opens, everyone dies. They learn this early. Mistakes are corrected instantly. Hesitation is not punished with anger but with relentless drills, till failure becomes impossible to repeat. Commands are few and simple. Most communication happens through motion alone. A raised spear, a step forward, a halt so sudden it sends shock through the legs. Silence is enforced, not because noise is forbidden, but because noise invites fear, and fear spreads faster than any enemy. At night, the camps remain subdued. Fires are kept low. Voices drop without being told. Men sit sharpening spearheads they have already sharpened 3 times that day. Not because the metal needs it, but because the ritual calms the hands. There are no boasts, no promises of victory. Everyone knows the numbers. They know how many banners the English army carries. They know how many knights ride with them. They know the stories of charges that shattered lines in battles. It's decided in minutes. Some have seen it themselves. Scars are rarely discussed, but always noticed. Leadership does not come from distance. Robert the Bruce moves among them without ceremony. No raised platform. No guarded perimeter. He watches more than he speaks. When he does speak, it is not of glory. It is of position, of timing, of holding ground. He does not ask them to be fearless. He asks them to stand. Among the ranks, emotions remain tightly controlled but not absent. One man fingers a leather cord tied around his wrist, worn smooth from years of use. Another stares too long toward the horizon, then forces his eyes back to the line. No one speaks of home, but everyone thinks of it. They understand what failure means, not retreat. Not lost Iditarod, villages burned, families scattered, names forgotten. That knowledge sharpens focus more effectively than any threat. Rules are absolute. No one leaves formation without command. No one pursues without signal. No one turns to face danger alone. Every man is replaceable. The formation is not. They drill until exhaustion strips thought down to instinct, until feet move without orders, until the sound of the man beside them breathing becomes as familiar as their own. The English watch from a distance. They see rough clothing, simple weapons, men standing shoulder to shoulder without armor worthy of the name. They do not see the discipline. They do not see the hours spent learning how not to move. They mistake stillness for weakness as the day advances. Tension tightens like a drawn cord. No one knows when the first move will come. Only that when it does, there will be no second chance. The men adjust grips, shift weight subtly, check spacing without looking. Everything is ready. They do not know what will happen next, but they know one thing with absolute certainty. When the moment comes, they will not break. Asterisk, the first signs are easy to dismiss. Small things. The kind commanders usually ignore. Movement along the English front slows not everywhere, just in places. A unit pauses longer than expected before advancing. Another adjusts its spacing twice within minutes. Nothing serious. Nothing worth stopping an army for, but the ground begins to speak. Horses shift uneasily, stamping and snorting where they should be calm. Some refuse to move forward without coaxing. Others step, then pull back, as if sensing something unseen beneath the surface. The soil near the burn feels soft underfoot, not muddy, just wrong. As though it might give way if pressed too hard, scouts are sent out. They return with little to report. No ambush. No sudden movement from the Scottish line. That somehow feels worse. The Scots do not advance. They do not retreat. They do not respond at all. They stand in silence. No taunts drift across the field. No arrows test the distance. No banners wave to provoke. Just a line of men still, compact, patient. Among the English ranks, signals are passed more frequently now. A horn sounds, then another answers, but the timing is off. A pause where there should be none. Officers repeat orders already given, then repeat them again. The army is large, powerful but stretched. Communication moves slower than expected. As formations edge forward, alignment begins to drift. Not enough to panic, but enough to require correction. Correction takes time. Time breeds doubt. A mounted officer rides ahead, then pulls back sharply, signaling to adjust approach. Another counters the order moments later. The men hesitate, caught between commands. Across the field, the Scottish line shifts slightly, not backward. Not forward, just enough to be noticed. A ripple passes through the English front. Someone laughs nervously. Someone else tightens a grip on reins. The air feels heavy. Sound carries strangely now. Orders seem swallowed before they reach the rear. Footsteps echo unevenly. The terrain narrows where the advance must pass. Streams and wooded ground funnel movement inward. There is less space than expected. Units begin to compress. Armor brushes armor. Horses crowd closer. A few men glance sideways, not a head-checking distance to the next rank. This is not how a confident advance feels. The Scots remain silent. Their spears are angled, not raised high. Their posture is relaxed but deliberate. It's too deliberate. A horn sounds again, longer this time. The order to advance is clear, yet the line does not surge forward as one. Some move quickly, others lag, slowed by ground and congestion. The rhythm breaks. An experienced knight senses it immediately. This is not momentum, this is weight without balance. Behind him, the mass continues to press forward, unaware of the growing strain. In the distance, a shout recesses, then cuts off. No one knows why. The Scottish line does not react. Its silence becomes unbearable. Men expect movement, resistance, something. But the stillness feels like a held breath. Shadows lengthen and light shifts across the field. A realization spreads quietly from rank to rank. This battle is not unfolding as planned. The enemy is not where they were expected to be. The ground is not behaving as it should. Orders do not carry cleanly. And worst of all, there's a growing sense that the first true mistake has already been made. No one can say when. No one can say how. Only that whatever happens next will happen fast. And when it does, there will be no time left to correct it. It does not begin with a single moment. It begins unevenly. The English advance is supposed to move as one body wide, powerful, unstoppable. Instead, it rolls forward in pieces. Some units step out confidently. Others hesitate, slowed by narrowing ground and unseen resistance beneath their feet. The space between ranks closes too quickly. Armor brushes armor. Shields knock together. Horses snort and toss their heads, crowded and restless. A horn sounds clear and sharp. The order is unmistakable. Advance. The front presses forward, and then it's contact. Not a crash, not a sudden explosion of movement. Resistance. The Scottish line does not fall back. It does not scatter. It holds spears angle forward in perfect alignment, not raised wildly, not thrust in panic. They form a solid barrier, dense, unyielding. The first horses slow instinctively. Some rear, some twist sideways, refusing to push into the wall ahead. Riders shout. Spurs dig in. Behind them, the mass continues to move forward, unaware of what is happening at the front. Pressure builds. The ground gives slightly beneath the weight. Men stumble, not struck, but shoved from behind. A foot slips. A shoulder is forced out of place. The line compresses. Sound rises sharply now. Metal scrapes, wood cracks. Voices overlap into something shapeless and loud. Commands are shouted, but they arrive broken, distorted by noise and distance. The Scottish formation begins to move. Not rushing, not charging, stepping forward one step, then another. Every spear advances together. The effect is unsettling. The English expect retreat. A sudden attack, they get neither. The space shrinks. Horses have nowhere to turn. Men are pressed chest to back, breath forced out of lungs. Some try to pull away. There is no room. The ground near the burn softens further under constant movement. Boots sink, hooves slide. A man goes down. Then another, not from blows but from imbalance. Falling here is dangerous not because of what strikes you, but because of what cannot stop. Those behind do not know. They continue forward. A banner tilts, then drops from sight. Someone shouts a name. It is swallowed immediately. The Scottish line advances again, still controlled. Each step is small but relentless. The English formation begins to fold inward, its own size working against it. What should be strength becomes weight. Men at the front are forced backward into those behind them. Those behind push forward, believing resistance lies ahead. No one can see the whole field anymore. Vision is limited to helmets, shoulders, the press of bodies. Sound becomes overwhelming. Not screams yet, but confusion. Orders contradict each other. Advance, hold, pull back. Too many voices, no clear authority. Some units attempt to maneuver sideways, searching for space that does not exist. They collide with others trying the same. The formation fractures not cleanly, but unevenly, like wet cloth tearing under strain. The Scottish spears keep coming, not stabbing wildly, holding ground, taking space. The realization spreads slowly, then all at once. This is not a battle of motion. It is a battle of pressure, and pressure favors the prepared. A ripple of panic moves through the English ranks, not fear of death, fear of being trapped. Breathing becomes difficult. Movement feels impossible. A knight tries to turn his horse. There is no room. Another dismounts instinctively only to be shoved sideways by the crowd. The ground slopes unexpectedly. More men lose footing when they fall. They disappear from sight almost instantly. Not struck down, covered. The noise changes. It loses rhythm. Becomes uneven, then sharp, then scattered. Somewhere to the rear, a horn sounds again. Too late. The message cannot reach the front. The Scottish line advances once more. The English front gives way not suddenly, but finally space opens where it should not. What follows is not pursuit. It is collapse. Men surge sideways. Backward. Anywhere that offers air. Units dissolve into fragments without knowing they have done so. Banners are abandoned, not dropped intentionally, but lost in the press. Shouting turns to isolated cries. Then fewer, then silence begins to spread in pockets. Not because the field is empty, but because order is gone. The Scots halt, not everywhere but where their objective is met. They do not chase blindly. They hold, they breathe, they reform across the ground. Movement slows, not with a signal, with exhaustion, with disbelief, with the sudden absence. A resistance dust hang in the air. The noise that filled the field minutes ago fades unevenly. Metal settles. Footsteps stop, and then an unfamiliar quiet takes hold. No cheer rises. No declaration follows. Just the unsettling stillness of something irreversible having already happened. The English force. Moments ago vast and confident is no longer a single thing. It is scattered motion, broken sound, unanswered commands. The incident does not end with a final blow. It ends with uncertainty, with men standing still, trying to understand how everything collapsed so completely and how quickly control slipped away. And as the field grows quiet, one truth becomes clear. What was meant to be overwhelming force has turned inward on itself, and nothing on this ground will ever return to how it was before. Asterisk. What follows does not feel like victory or defeat. It feels like disorientation. The English command attempts to reassemble what remains of the army. But clarity is impossible. Units that should be intact cannot be located. Standards expected at rally points never appear. Messengers are sent then sent again. Some return with partial answers. Others do not return at all. Reports arrive fragmented and inconsistent. One officer claims the front collapsed suddenly. Another insists it held longer than expected. A third describes pressure building slowly, with no clear moment of failure. None of the accounts align. Numbers do not add up. Entire sections of the field are searched for fallen banners, missing officers, or recognizable formations, but the ground offers little certainty. Footprints overlap endlessly. Paths blur together. What should look like a retreat does not. What should look like a rout does not either. It is as if the army simply lost coherence. Piece by piece, English commanders question survivors individually. Where were you positioned? Who gave the order to advance? When did the line break? Answers vary wildly. Some swear they never heard the signal to withdraw. Others insist they heard it too late. Many say they heard nothing at all. The same moment is described in incompatible ways. Official notes are taken but carefully. Language is softened. Phrases like unexpected resistance, difficult terrain appear repeatedly. Direct responsibility is avoided. No single decision is identified as the cause. Meanwhile, the Scottish response is restrained. Their formations remain intact. Their movements are measured. They do not pursue far beyond their chosen ground. They do not scatter in celebration. Instead, they consolidate positions quietly, as if expecting something else to follow. Scouts are sent, not to chase, but to observe. There is no urgency in their actions. That alone raises questions. Captured English soldiers are questioned but briefly. Few details are recorded. Fewer still are shared. What happened on the field seems to be treated as self-evident, acquiring no explanation. Later chronicles will differ sharply depending on their origin. English records minimize the scale of the collapse. Scottish accounts emphasize discipline and resolve but avoid specifics. Exact timelines are absent. Distances are vague, certain. Movements are mentioned without explanation, then never referenced again. Why did some units fail to engage at all? Why did others arrive too late to matter? There are references to commands issued, but no confirmation they were received. Names appear once, and vanish from the record entirely. Even the order of events becomes uncertain. Did the collapse begin at the front or deeper within the formation? Was there a moment when recovery was possible? No document answers this clearly. Instead, official narrative settles on inevitability. The defeat is framed as unfortunate, but understandable, as if it simply happened. No inquiry follows that would resemble a modern investigation. No commander is formally condemned. Blame disperses into circumstance, terrain, confusion, chance. Yet the gaps remain. Too many inconsistencies. Too many missing details. Historians later notice that some reports appear revised, language altered, emphasis shifted. What might have suggested panic is rewritten as miscommunication. What could have implied loss of control becomes unexpected pressure. The truth, if it was ever fully recorded, is buried beneath caution. For Scotland, clarity is unnecessary. For England, it is uncomfortable. So the records close not with answers, but with silence. And in that silence, Bannockburn becomes something more than a battle. It becomes an event, explained just enough to be remembered, but never enough to be fully understood. What exactly went wrong is left unresolved, not because no one asked, but because no one seemed willing to answer, with the official accounts offering only fragments. Explanations begin to form in the spaces between them. None are complete. None are confirmed. They exist because something about Bannockburn refuses to settle into a single, clean narrative. The most widely accepted explanation is also the safest, according to this view. The English defeat was the result of poor tactical decisions layered on top of difficult terrain. The army was too large, its formations too rigid, its leadership inexperienced. The narrow ground restricted movement. The advance compressed the ranks. Momentum failed. Once pressure built at the front, control was lost behind it. On paper, this explanation works. It accounts for confusion. It explains the lack of coordination. It avoids assigning blame to any single commander, yet it leaves Unanswered questions. Why were warnings about the terrain ignored? Why did the advance continue once spacing was clearly failing? Why do accounts differ so sharply on when the collapse began? If this was merely bad planning, why does no one clearly admit it? Another theory shifts focus from strategy to psychology. Proponents argue that the English army began to break mentally before it broke physically. The stillness of the Scottish line, the refusal to retreat, the silent, deliberate advance. These elements, unfamiliar and unsettling, may have created fear long before contact intensified. Once, a few men faltered. Doubt spread faster than orders could correct it. In such conditions, discipline erodes quietly. Men stop trusting signals. Officers lose authority. Individuals act to preserve themselves rather than the formation. This theory explains the uneven accounts of panics and witnessing it early. Others not at all. But it, too, has limits. Morale alone does not explain why trained units failed simultaneously across different sections of the field, nor does it account for missing movements and unrecorded commands. Fear may have played a role, but was it enough? A more controversial explanation suggests the battlefield itself was deliberately shaped. Supporters of this theory argue that the Scots selected Bannockburn not only for its defensive position, but for its ability to neutralize superior numbers. Soft ground near the streams, restricted approach routes, subtle obstacles that would not be obvious until pressure mounted. Contemporary Scottish accounts are vague about preparation. Too vague. They speak of knowing the land without, explaining how that knowledge was used. English records, meanwhile, repeatedly mention difficulty moving but never specify why. If the ground was intentionally exploited or altered, acknowledging it would undermine claims of honorable defeat, so it remains unspoken. Yet there is no direct proof, no clear record of constructed traps, no explicit testimony, only implication. The final theory questions not the battle, the history written afterward. According to this view, Bannockburn was not merely lost, it was misrepresented. Command failures were softened. Critical moments were omitted. Responsibility was blurred. Edward II survived the battle politically, but only barely. Open acknowledgement of catastrophic command failure could have threatened his authority. So narratives shifted. What was once panic became confusion. What was collapse became withdrawal. Scottish accounts, too, had reason to simplify. Victory did not need complication. Between pride and preservation, accuracy suffered. This theory explains the missing files, the revised language, the absence of inquiry, but like the others, it cannot be proven conclusively. Each theory explains part of Bannockburn. None explain all of it, and that is what makes the battle linger in uncertainty, not because historians lack information, but because the truth may lie in the overlap between terrain, fear, preparation, and silence. And somewhere in that overlap, the full story remains hidden. Asterisk, when the field finally falls quiet, Bannockburn does not feel finished. There is no grand, conclusive moment, no signal from heaven or earth marking the conclusion, no single shout, no clarion call, no banner raised in triumph. Only silence stretches across the expanse of churned earth, the silence of the aftermath that is louder than any battle cry. The wind drifts across the fields where thousands once pressed forward, shields bracing, spears aligned, horses snorting and straining against the uneven ground, their hooves leaving deep impressions that the rain and sun will slowly fade but never fully erase. The air hangs heavy with dust, with the iron scent of abandoned armor, with the intangible residue of fear and determination. Every footprint, every indentation in the grass, carries memory not just of where men stood, but of what they felt, what they feared, and what decisions they made in the fraction of a second between life and death. Time moves over the battlefield now, indifferent, unhurried, smoothing, softening, reclaiming. Grass grows where lines once held, softening the harsh edges of chaos, filling in the ruts left by horses, men, and wheels. Yet even as nature reclaims, the memory of human exertion remains, haunting the soil with a presence that will not dissipate. It is not merely the absence of sound that makes the field so unsettling, but the absence of comprehension. Orders that were given vanished into the wind, never reaching the ears of those who should have obeyed. Movements noted once, in hurried chronicles or fleeting memory, were never repeated, never observed again. The rhythm of command, which should have structured chaos, collapsed silently and invisibly, leaving behind fragments of action that refused to be pieced together neatly. To study Bannockburn is to confront the impossibility of total understanding. The more one attempts to reconcile accounts, to sequence movements, to explain causes, the more the narrative slips between certainty and conjecture, leaving historians, scholars, and the curious alike suspended in unease. For Scotland, Bannockburn represents a turning point. Not because the war itself was concluded, not because enemies were annihilated, but because it proved that against overwhelming force, survival, resistance, and triumph were possible. The Scots remember it as a testament to discipline, to courage, to the power of knowing one's land and using it with cunning precision. Robert the Bruce becomes larger than a man. He embodies strategy, foresight, and calm authority. His gaze sweeps over the schiltrons, commanding not with loud voice, but with presence, and the men respond with silent cohesion. A human formation that is as formidable as any wall of stone. Yet even in triumph, questions remain. How much of the outcome was premeditated genius? How much the subtle exploitation of terrain? How much was chance? How much depended on the fortitude of individual men making impossible decisions in the press of bodies and the suffocating compression of massed armies? Even as the stories sing of victory, they do so over a foundation that is part shadow, part speculation, part unrecorded moment. For England, the story is framed differently. Defeat is acknowledged, but carefully softened. Reports speak of unexpected resistance or difficult terrain, rather than panic, collapse, or misjudgment. Commanders remain in place, reputations preserved, responsibility diffused into circumstance. The collapse of formations is described with words that imply inevitability rather than human error or mismanagement. Yet the gaps are obvious to the discerning observer. Entire units vanish from reports. Movements are inconsistent. Timelines fail to reconcile. And even contemporary chroniclers cannot agree on the sequence of events. The English army did not simply lose. It unraveled in ways that remain elusive, and no official account captures the full scope. As centuries pass, these silences grow louder than words, the very absence of explanation becoming part of the story.